Blessings. Lovely that you have joined me this evening. And it is the night of the new moon. So, yeah, very potent time for new beginnings. And yeah, it's a Samhain new moon. So, again, a double time for new beginnings. So, it's so wonderful for me to be beginning this new venture, this new community, working with the sacred cycles of the earth, the sky, the planets, and yeah, so thank you for joining me. So I thought this evening it would be to start off with a little introduction to the tradition that I follow, where we use the deities of this land here in Ireland, the ancient deities that are part of the psyche, part of the consciousness, the remembrance from ancient times. And many of these deities, it's known they date to pre-Celtic times. A lot of people think of the Irish tradition and they would presume that it belongs to the Celtic tradition, but I guess for me, I really relate to the pre-Celtic um, traditions and spirituality, because it is a time basically that goes back to the Stone Age. And it is a time where the earth was revered as a mother. She was the creative force, and so the feminine was given great respect and honoring. And of course, there's so many details that we don't know about this time, but it really seems to contrast greatly with the arrival of the warrior cult that came from the European steppes. And it's thought that when they domesticated the horse and began to ride the horse, and also began mining for copper, things changed greatly, and it became more of a patriarchal uh, focal, where men were more powerful, I suppose, because they had conquered the horse. They were able to travel at such great speeds, and also they had the power of alchemy. They were changing stones and rocks into gold and copper. So we see this reflected in the mythologies, where we start to hear about the goddesses being vengeful and angry, and expressing all the shadow aspects of the feminine. And yeah, so then we hear about them being raped by the pantheon of gods, these male gods, the warrior gods. And so it heralds a really big change in society. So a lot of the goddesses that we work with, the ancient Irish tradition, are goddesses that are known to date back to pre-Celtic times even. We know this from linguistics and from studying the names of some of these deities. So we work with the solar wheel, the 8 cross quarter points of the year, and I'm just going to share some images with you to help to get a better understanding of what we're talking about here. So yeah, this opening slide, of course, I just put it in there as a welcoming, because it's very much the case that when women gather together, when energies are combined, that great things can happen. And yeah, so traditionally, this was very much done at the time of the dark moon. Oops, sorry. And yeah, so we know that in traditions all over the world, the indigenous peoples, we hear about gathering at the time of the dark moon to nurture each other, to particularly nurture the women who were bleeding, and uh, it was a time when women are known to have practiced their divination skills, consulting the oracle, and generally, coming together, discussing, issues maybe that were happening within their community, trying to resolve challenges maybe, and also sharing their stories, particularly with the younger women. This sharing of the wisdom of the older women would really have helped the younger women to progress in their lives without making the same mistakes that their elders have. And of course, this is something that has been so missing from Western culture for so long. So I'm very passionate about this idea of gathering together again at this time of the dark moon. Today is a new moon, and so I normally would gather on dark moon, but uh, due to unforeseen circumstances, we're here on the new moon. But anyway, so to talk about the wheel of the year, this is a traditional chart where you see the 8 cross quarter points. We start at Samhain, we go on to winter solstice, Imbolc, spring equinox, Bealtaine, summer solstice, Lunasa, and the autumn equinox. So these 8 cross quarter points were a way to divide the seasons for people to understand the changing cycles of nature, and of course to be able to understand the passage of time, and probably also they were able to predict weather patterns and see. We know, for instance, that they were predicting uh, eclipse, and so these ancient people were very experienced in terms of the astrological astronomical movements of the planetary bodies, the sun, the moon, and the stars. So this is a little drawing I made to show the position of the different goddesses on the wheel. Now it's very squiggly, as you can see. I didn't spend much time doing it, but I just wanted to give a little illustration of where they sit. So Samhain is the beginning of the Celtic year. I mentioned in a post earlier that it was very much in the darkness that all things began. Like we know that the festivals, these ancient festivals, began on the eve of the day. So Samhain began on the eve, and so we had the modern tradition of Halloween, the eve before All Hallows Day. And so Samhain, the beginning of the Celtic year, and in fact, we know it was that this wheel of the sun was actually devised back in the Stone Age, which I'll explain to you in a minute. But just to show you the position of the goddesses on the 8 points of the wheel, we start with Thlockta at Samhain, and she sits at the northwest. Then we have the Cailleach in the north, Bridget in the northeast, Boan in the east, Maeve, the southeast, Anya in the south, Talta in the southwest, and Macha in the west. So, yeah, these were the ancient goddesses that sit at these points of the wheel, and each of these goddesses is associated with certain um, aspects and personality traits or teachings and challenges. I suppose each goddess would have her teachings. These teachings have come to us very much from the old stories, the myth, from the mythological cycles of ancient times, and we know that they date back all the way back into the Stone Age because of this particular ancient site in Ireland, this sacred site called Slieve na Cailleach, which means the hill of the witch, the Cailleach. And so this is a megalithic cemetery, as it's described, because it contains a number of it consists of a number of hills, and these hills have these ancient stone built chambers. written on them, known as megalithic tombs. But as many people are realizing now, they're not so much tombs as you know, chambers or sacred chambers, yeah, where all sorts of community practices, rites of passages, rituals would have taken place. So there are many cairns, and a cairn is a mound of stones that covers over these chambers, these passageways leading into chambers. And you see there, each of the points on the wheel has a solar alignment with a different cairn on the summit of Sliabh which is pretty mind-blowing, really, because it shows us that Lochru in particular, Sliabh was a place where they had actually created this ancient calendar, this solar wheel. And you know, these monuments or these sacred sites on Lochru that have solar alignments, because there are monuments all over Ireland and Britain and along the Atlantic seafront that have megalithic monuments. But it seems that, in fact, a lot of the ones in Ireland are actually earlier than the ones that we find in the Mediterranean. So then, just a little run through the goddesses and their characteristics and their teachings, their challenges. And this is a wonderful picture painted by my friend Helen O'Sullivan, who's an amazing artist. That she painted this picture based on the teachings of we trained together with Amantha Murphy through the way of the Shavan, which is a tradition that Amanda has brought through. Her mother, or sorry, her grandmother was a healer, a midwife, and she describes her as a midwife of the soul because she was the one who brought the soul through at birth and also accompanied the soul at the end of life. So it is this tradition of the stories and the healer, Banfassa or healer woman in ancient Ireland, that a lot of these teachings have come through from our teacher Amantha Murphy. And so Helen, drawing on the teachings of Amantha, came up with this beautiful image of Tlachta. And so Tlachta is associated with Samhain, and as you see that she guards the gate to the ancestral realms. And it is very much to Tlachta that we go to consult with our ancestors, to tune in, to connect with the ancestors, to help us to release the programs that we carry in the DNA, the programs that have come down to us through our ancestors, programs that really worked and served our ancestors in times of difficulty and strife, but which are no longer appropriate to us very often. Like in Ireland, we had the great psychic wound of the famine, where 2/3 of the population either died or emigrated, and those who were left, struggled through famine. And this is a wound that a lot of Irish people hold, and probably the diaspora all over the world. So it's often associated with things like obesity. And one study has actually shown that, interestingly, people of the Irish diaspora often carry this illness called hemochromatosis, which is basically where the body stores extra iron. And it's thought that this is a carryover from the famine, when there was so little to eat that the body actually learned to store extra iron so that in times of need, they would have these reserves. So it's so fascinating to see that expressed genetically as well. So you see there this clock, she's at the gateway, and the the image represents, this feeling that we walk on the bones of our ancestors. The ancestors lie beneath our feet in the soil. The ancestors are closer than we might sometimes think. And of course, these 8 quarter points were thought to be times when the veil between the worlds were thin, and sound, of course, was thought to be particularly thin because of this association with the time of the dead. And so, yeah, so Tlachta has this holds this key to working with the ancestral realm. Next, we come to the Cailleach, who sits at the time of winter solstice. And again, this is another beautiful painting by Helen O'Sullivan, and you can find her paintings on the Whispers Gallery. But I've put the link to her website in the chat there. But anyway, yeah. So winter solstice, the Cailleach is the ancient crone figure, the hag, the old lady in the mythology, how she was so ancient, saw the beginning of the formations of the land, and that that she was responsible for the creation of the land itself. And she ran across the landscape with rocks in her apron, and as she dropped the rocks, the hills and the mountains were formed. So she sits at the place of the north, and it says that it's to her that our ancestors traveled to seek the wisdom of the ancient ones. So the winter solstice, of course, a time of deep rest and renewal, unlike what our culture, of course, promotes, this time of hedonism and uber commercialism, where we're supposed to drink as much as we can, eat as much as we can, party as much as we can. Whereas, our ancestors were actually doing the opposite, really resting and almost in this hibernation state, similar to the animals. It was about conserving their energy and making waiting for that turning of the year, that turning of as they saw the Irish for winter solstice is Greenstad on Gevru, which means the pause of the sun. So the ancient people thought that from winter solstice to summer solstice, the sun moved across the horizon. Every day you could see it moving a little bit further across the horizon until it came to winter solstice. And then it was seen to move all the way back across the horizon in this arc between the east, the most easterly rising of the sun to the northeast and the southeast, and similarly from the setting of the sun from the southeast to southwest. So yeah, this was the time when the sun was thought to rebirth itself, when we had the longest night, the shortest day, and then after winter solstice, the days, of course, start growing longer, and it was a time of great celebration. Nowhere is this Stone Age reality expressed more than at Newgrange in County Meath, the Brú na Bóinne. So after the winter solstice, of course, we get the time of Imbolc and Bridget. And again, this is a beautiful painting by Helen O'Sullivan of Bridget. She's done several, but I love this one. Her beautiful naked breasts. And she holds the fire in one hand. And of course, that's what's special about Bridget. She oversees two of the elements, the fire and the water. And this is unusual that one deity holds two of the elements under her. So Imbolc, spring, the first day of spring in the Irish tradition, because here in the northwest of Europe, we of course do have a much earlier springtime than is seen in Europe. It's where the grass starts to grow again. We get the nettles coming up and the snowdrops, the tulips, or sorry, not the tulips, the crocuses. So we start to get the first growth again in February. And the story of Bridget is, of course, how her green cloak spreads across the land, spreading this green wave of growth. And it also comes from this time when she was said to have been a Christian uh, saint, or a Christian woman, shall we say, where she her they say she was born at the threshold of the fortress of her father, who was a pagan king, and her mother was a Christian slave, and that she was this bridge between Christianity and paganism. And yeah, so she holds this very potent energy of the a threshold energy. So it is the very first innings of spring, the quickening, and it is this place of the very first awakening after the winter solstice. We begin to wake up with the earth as she begins to wake up and begin her new cycle of growth. Then we come to the spring equinox, presided over by the great white cow goddess Boan. Bo meaning cow, and An, it comes from Bo Find, which is the fair or bright or white. So she's very much associated with the Milky Way, with the springtime. You can see here in the background, this is Newgrange, where which is built along the bank of her river, the River Boyne, where which is named after her. So it's said she brings the waters down to earth. She's the connection with the cosmos, with the Milky Way, and she is the youth, you know, the one who begins to forge her own individuality. She begins to assert her own identity, her own personality, and is very much associated with the dream time and bringing our dreams into reality. Then we come to Bealtaine, or around for the 1st of May or the 31st of April, of course, is May Eve. And this is presided over by the great goddess Maeve. Great Maeve, who's famous for her warriorship. She's very much the patroness of sovereignty, and this time of Bealtaine, where it's the time of the flowering. And you see her there, she's very powerful looking. I love this painting. I don't know who's done this painting, but I found it online, and I like it because it's, you know, she's very real looking. She's you know, she's kind of robust, you know, she looks like a warrioress. She's holding her shield, but she's also got the chalice, because, or sorry, the sword, because it was said she, you know, the sword was to protect the innocent, and the sword of truth to cut through the falsehood. And she's also associated with the chalice, because this time of Bealtaine in the human development is associated with the first blood. It's this a time where the miracle of menstruation is symbolized by the chalice. So this chalice is our sacred cauldron, the place of magic, where we can birth new life from this chalice of our womb, which you know, is fertilized by the blood on each side, and you know, it has that potential to create new life. So next we move to the summer solstice, and this is presided over by the goddess Anya. Again, this is another beautiful painting of I love her depiction of Anya, and of course, I'm honored to hold her name. But yeah, you see the beautiful fairy queen Astyr. She's got these incredible gears and fingernails, the sparkles of the magic of the fairy world. Uh, So yeah, she's associated with this time of the full summer sunshine, the fire, the midday fire. She is we're at the height of our glory, coming into the summer solstice, the time of alchemy when the flower turns to the fruit. We start to see all the summer fruits, the strawberries and the raspberries, and so she's very much associated with this time of the full sun, the full power of the sun. And you know, in this part of the world, in the northwest, this is actually our midsummer, because you know our seasons are a little bit different to what traditionally people would think of being the summer solstice, or being the the beginning of summer for a lot of the Mediterranean countries would be this end of June time, but in Ireland it starts the 1st of May, and the 1st of August heralds in the autumn. So yeah, our seasons are slightly different to you know, people who live in more sunny climates. So yeah, this is Anya, the fairy queen, associated with music and joy and finding our bliss and the magical inner child. Then we move on to Taltu, the goddess of Lunasa, and she is associated with the bringing of the knowledge of farming to Ireland. She is the one who's said to have taught the people to plough the fields and sow the crops. I'm not sure again who the artist is. I'm sorry to say. I found this beautiful painting online, but I really loved it because in the background here you can see the mound, and it said that she was the foster mother of Lou, and that Lou loved her so much that he, when she died, that he built this mound over her in a place called Talta in County Meath, and that he inaugurated these games, which were called the Talton Games, and they were um, held in her honor, and a bit like the Olympic Games, it was said that people came from all over the land to show their great prowess and their skills, their talents, and all sorts of competitions were held. So you see her, this beautiful picture where she's in this harvest season. She's got her arms full of the cornucopia with all the beautiful fruits of the harvest. And so, yeah, she's described as the gentle mother as well. And it's this her story is about, you know, knowing when to how to take care of yourself as a mother, not to over mother, not to over give, because the mythologies talk about how she worked so hard, she tilled the land so hard that she died of exhaustion. So that is very much a very powerful message for all mothers, not to overwork yourself, you know, to know how to nourish, to know how to refill your cup, and to have your boundaries, and you know, not to you know, to know when to say no. Next we come to Maca, the great horse goddess. um just moving that. So yeah, again, I found this image online. I thought it was very illustrative of the story of Maca, which was one of the great a sorrow, and you know, one of those stories which really is a story of the one of the great ancient archetypes or goddesses um being you know, disempowered by the Christians who told these stories. So the image you see, this pregnant woman, the running horse, because Macha was associated as this horse goddess, and her story tells about how she had this ability to outrun the fastest horse. And so her husband goes to the king's feast, and the king is boasting about his horses and says none can beat his horses. But of course, then her husband stands forth and says, "Oh, but you haven't seen the speed of my wife, Maka." So anyway, Maka is summoned and she's told she has to come or her husband will be killed. And so she comes, and so she begs the people to, not to wait until she's had her baby. And of course, they don't listen, and they send her to race the horses, and she races, and of course she wins the race, but she dies, or she falls to the ground at the finishing, and gives birth to her twins. And it's said then that she curses the people of Ulster for making her run this race. And she says that in their times of greatest need, they fall into a 4-day weakness of a woman in labor. And so, sorry, I'm just going to put something on my fire. So, yeah, oops. That is the story of Macha. And I did a journey myself. I think it was 2 years ago to Macha, and had uh, this very strong message about how we need to rewrite these storylines, and because they are very much were written down first by the Christian monks, who had their own filter, shall we say. It said that they really wanted to illustrate society ideally as they wished, rather than actually how it was. So, as I was saying earlier, a lot of these ancient stories have been, shall we say, edited, or given a certain hue to illustrate whatever they wanted to describe of the times. So anyway, when I journeyed to Makkah, I had this image that we need to really stand in our sovereignty. And if we had stood, if Makkah had been able to, she would have stood in her sovereignty and said, "I will not race at this moment when I'm about to give birth, because it would be such a violation of this sacred uh, role of the mother giving birth to this next generation." And so instead of running the race, she might have um, bestowed on the people the strength of a woman in labor, the strength and the fearlessness, the courage of a woman in labor, rather than the opposite, this cursing with the um, the pains of child labor on the men of Ulster. And so that is then the eight um, points of the wheel, the eight goddesses that reside there. And yes, so it is uh, a beautiful practice to work with these goddesses of the wheels. And because each goddess has, like I say, a teaching and a challenge. And when we familiarize ourselves with the stories and with the teachings, it can really be very empowering and really help us to look at ourselves in a new light, and to call in these teachings, to embody the teachings each of the deities. So that was just a very quick little run through of the deities and some of the aspects, but there's always so much more. And so I'm going to finish this recording now, because I'm going to do the journey to Makkah in a separate recording, because it's just easier to load it. So thank you so much for listening, for joining me. You have to excuse me, I have a bit of a head cold, so I might have been that pleasant to listen to. But anyway, thank you for tuning in. And yeah, I look forward to sharing more of these teachings with you in the future. Many blessings.